Shocked on New Year's, I gave my coat to a stranger. What she revealed changed everything forever. Claire stood at the entrance of the community hall, her heart pounding as she adjusted the shoulder straps of her worn dress. She had planned to celebrate, to leave the day's burdens behind, even if just for a moment. But stepping over the threshold into the hall, filled with laughter and brightly lit faces, sent a wave of suffocating claustrophobia crashing over her. Could she mingle with these people? Those who didn't know the daily grind of scraping by as a single mother? As her children slept, she had hoped tonight would be a reprieve. Instead, it was a painful reminder of what she lacked. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught her eye as she spotted Margaret, an elderly woman shivering against the unforgiving frost. Without thinking, Claire shed her thick winter coat, enveloping the frail figure. The warmth of her coat became a silent promise, a tangible link to compassion that still lived within her despite everything. "Thank you," Margaret croaked, her eyes glistening with a spark of life. As they stood close amid the cacophony of fireworks, the two women exchanged snippets of their lives. "I take care of a family estate," Margaret's voice quivered, her hands clasping Claire's. "It was once beautiful. Now it's just lost." The words hit Claire like a sudden gust of wind, unraveling something deep inside her, her family's past. Tales of her grandmother, whispered during quiet kitchen gatherings, surged to the surface. Could tracing her lineage reveal dreams buried beneath years of hardship? But what floated beneath that longing was a more sinister current. The estate hinted at untold family tensions, generational chains that could bind her with expectations rather than liberate her spirit. As Claire dared to look closer, she felt fear prickling at the back of her mind. What if she unearthed more disappointment? What if her quest drained the hope she had? The clock was ticking toward midnight, each second echoing in her heart, a countdown to decision. Before they could delve deeper, Claire took a breath, consciousness swirling with doubt as she thought of her children's future. "You're telling me there's a chance to reclaim it?" she asked, her voice sounding far steadier than she felt. Was reclaiming that home an avenue for stability or a path to repeat old mistakes? Just as clarity began to form, Margaret's gaze turned heavy. "But there are hurdles, dear. You might have to confront the ugly truths of the past." As the fireworks exploded around them, the pressure in Claire's chest tightened, a mounting spiral of anxiety pushing her deeper into uncertainty. Just then, the chaos of the world seemed to hush around her. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With every revelation, her hopes felt more like treacherous stones than stepping stones. The chance to claim her heritage battled the anxiety of rekindling wounds she might be too fragile to face. Then, a bitter twist. She learned the window to purchase the estate would close imminently. Breath-catching, her pulse raced as if drowning in despair amidst the vibrant celebrations that surrounded them, each shout of joy echoing the bitter realities she faced. Could she rise against this tide, or was she destined to sink beneath it? As the countdown began, Claire stood on the precipice of a choice that could either lift her toward empowerment or pull her back into the confines of doubt. With each chime of the clock, she realized that her pursuit of identity and legacy might be the very thing holding her hostage. Facing anxiety head-on, she teetered on the edge, where aspirations for her children intertwined cruelly with her ancestral burden, and uncertainty blurred the thin line between hope and despair. The new year beckoned her, but as the last echo of the countdown resonated, Claire felt the daunting weight of not only her past, but also the ever-looming question, was she ready for the fight that lay ahead? The chime of the final countdown sent a tremor through Claire, echoing against the walls of her consciousness. It wasn't just a new year dawning. It felt like a precipice teetering beneath her feet. As she focused on Margaret's face, the deep wrinkles and glint of wisdom in her eyes seemed to intertwine with the shadows of Claire's past, pulling her deeper into an exploration she had tried to dodge. "What if I'm not strong enough?" Claire asked, her voice barely a whisper, lost amid splashes of color exploding in the sky. Her thoughts cascaded like fireworks, each representing a memory or fear longing for attention. The desire to reclaim her heritage was entwined with the dread of emotional devastation. "Strength isn't about never feeling fear, dear. It's about moving forward despite it," Margaret replied, her hand squeezing Claire's. It was a lifeline in a sea of turmoil. In that moment, Claire's mind shifted gears, shedding layers of doubt. She had spent years pushing through daily stumbles with her children in tow, yet this felt different. Embarking on this journey promised echoes of both discomfort and potential triumph. Did she really possess the grit to face her ancestors' demons and breathe life back into the estate? "I need to see it," Claire said, surprised by her own conviction. A realization illuminated her thoughts. She couldn't let fear dictate her choices any longer. With that single statement, a small ember of determination flickered to life in the quiet corners of her heart. Margaret's eyes twinkled, as if seeing something within Claire that even she hadn't recognized. "Then we must act fast. There's a lot to untangle." The fog of uncertainty began to lift. Claire envisioned visiting the estate, a potential transformation ripe with possibilities. The house, in her imagination, stood as both a mausoleum for dreams lost and a canvas for revitalization, a center for reconnection. What if this journey offered a new beginning for her children? What if she succeeded, it could foster a sense of belonging, rooted deep in family history? As she exchanged hurried goodbyes with Margaret, Claire's mind buzzed with plans. She needed to gather information, piece together her family's history, and craft a strategy that would withstand the pressures of the upcoming deadline. Each tick of the clock felt less like an anchor and more like a cue to galvanize her resolve. Back home, she sank into a chair, mind racing. The kids were at last asleep, their quiet breaths punctuating the urgency of her own thoughts. She opened her laptop, fingers hovering over the keyboard. What had she been missing? What resources were available to guide her? Claire dove into online searches about her family estate, her heart racing as names and dates unfolded before her. Each discovery was like a key unlocking a door she didn't know existed. An email to a distant relative could lead to untold stories or hard truths, but it was a risk she was willing to embrace. As midnight waned into the early hours, fueled by caffeine and determination, Claire sat back, the weight of the world shifting. She had chosen an uncertain path that offered echoes of joy intermingled with the labor of confronting the past. But at that moment, the young woman who sat in her small kitchen felt a spark within, one that had been long buried beneath years of surviving. Suddenly, an email notification blinked into existence, and Claire's breath caught in her throat. A reply had arrived faster than she'd anticipated. Tentative fingers clicked to open it, revealing words that could either complicate or clarify her quest. Was this the opening she needed? Or did it pull her deeper into a territory fraught with unresolved pain? Claire felt her heart race. The time had come to face whatever lay hidden in her family's story and confront the legacy waiting to be unearthed. The moment Claire's eyes absorbed the words on her screen, an electric surge coursed through her veins. The email was from a cousin she had never met, a voice from the past, bridging the chasm of confusion and tradition that loomed over her family history. Scarcity of information had cloaked her understanding of her roots, but those digital words offered a potential silver lining to the persistent clouds that hung over her efforts. "Claire," the email began, "I've heard about your interest in the estate. I have pictures and documents that might help you, but we need to talk. Please, let me know when you can meet." 1,000 questions danced behind her eyes. It was a call to action, an invitation wrapped in intrigue and urgency. She stared at the screen as waves of doubt washed over her. Should she reply immediately or give herself time to process this unexpected twist? What if this cousin held secrets that could shake the very foundation of her understanding? With a firm inhale, she reminded herself of Margaret's wisdom. Strength came from moving forward, even when navigating fear. Seizing the moment, she tapped out a response, suggesting a meeting in a public cafe, a neutral ground where she could maintain control over the situation. Hours later, as morning bled into noon, Claire arrived at the cafe, her heart racing with anticipation. The smell of coffee wrapped around her like a welcome embrace, calming her mind just enough to stave off the panic threatening to return. She spotted her cousin sitting at a small table near the window, her demeanor radiating an inviting yet enigmatic energy. "Claire, it's so nice to finally meet you," the woman said, her smile genuine but tinged with something unidentifiable, possibly recognition of the turbulent journey ahead. They exchanged pleasantries, yet subtle undercurrents of familial tension swirled beneath their cordial facade. As they moved deeper into conversation, Claire found herself drawn to the stories her cousin shared, each recollection adorned with vibrancy. Phrases like "our ancestors" and the estate legacy reawakened something buried inside Claire, spurring within her a renewed sense of responsibility toward the family drama and resilience woven into her lineage. "Did you know," her cousin said, leaning in, "that there were rumors about the estate being a space of healing? Our family has chalked up its tumultuous history to the generational burdens we carry. My grandmother swore that truly knowing our roots could finally break those chains." Claire's pulse quickened. Was it possible that their destinies intertwined amidst that estate? Could this be the awakening she sought? The clarity to transform the estate into a nurturing sanctuary for her family rather than a relic of abandonment? There was something profound in the thought that the misfortunes of the past might be instruments of change for the future. Yet doubt crept in. Before she could let herself be swept away by possibilities, Claire had to consider the price of the truth. Would she be capable of facing everything that came with this legacy? "Let's unravel it together," she proposed, surprised at the conviction in her own voice. Her cousin nodded vehemently, a silent treaty forming between them. As they exchanged more stories and anecdotes, each one resonating with Claire's innermost fears and hopes, she felt an urgency building, a call to not only restore the estate, but to restore herself in the process. What strength could arise when she dived headfirst into this turbulent heritage? As their conversation came to a close, Claire felt the weight settling on her shoulders. She would need to embrace this journey fully, preparing for the emotional upheaval and growth no one could predict. On her drive home, Claire's thoughts churned. Shadows from the past loomed larger with every mile she traversed. What hidden truths awaited discovery? Was her cousin merely a guide, or would she become a catalyst for Claire to face her own fears? Determined, Claire envisioned the estate anew, not as a haunted memory, but a beacon around which her family's legacy could coalesce, empowered by acceptance, understanding, and change. And as she reached her front door, a new message pinged on her phone. An old family photograph attached, with details that promised to change everything Claire thought she knew about her bloodline and what it truly meant to belong. Claire's heart thumped in her chest as she opened the photograph. The image depicted a sprawling estate surrounded by ancient trees, their branches twisting toward a sky painted in oranges and purples, signs of the vivid sunsets that had graced her ancestors in another time. It was a stark contrast to the gray, introspective days she had grown accustomed to, yet it felt achingly familiar. The details in her cousin's email replayed in her mind. The estate legacy. With her fingers trembling, she zoomed in on the faces captured in sepia tones. An elder woman, several children, and a solitary man at the back with a stern expression. Her great-grandfather, she presumed. There was power emanating from those faces, a silent assertion of resilience that contrasted sharply against her fragmented present. What had become of the warmth that must have filled those walls? The question echoed uncomfortably as she searched her memories for any fragment of connection to this past. With the click of a button, she sent a reply to her cousin, asking for more information about the context of the photograph and how it connected to the estate she was eager to reclaim. Days passed, and Claire threw herself into research about her family history. She scoured newspapers and genealogy records, and even reached out to distant relatives for information, each fragment of data further intertwining her with the complex tapestry of her lineage. It was a dizzying journey, but with every discovery, she felt a semblance of purpose growing. This was more than just the estate. It was about reclaiming herself. However, the deeper she delved into her ancestry, the more complex her emotions became. Secrets emerged. An uncle branded a black sheep, an aunt who had disappeared without a trace, and whisperings of feuds that had festered over generations. The allure of her family's history began to feel burdensome, and a creeping realization settled in. Could she bear the weight of these familial legacies? One late evening, as she sat among stacks of documents and notes, Claire felt the gravity of her quest settle heavily on her shoulders. Would uncovering the truth of her family bring healing, or would it mar her understanding further? Each potential revelation felt like an avalanche of uncertainties, but Margaret's voice whispered in the back of her mind, urging her toward bravery. Rather than retreating into fear, Claire decided to confront it head-on. The following day, she would visit the estate and experience its aura firsthand, stepping inside the very walls that had once sheltered her ancestors. Somehow, she believed doing so would tether her to her roots, even if the truths ahead promised discomfort. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Claire wrestled with her thoughts. She pondered what revelations awaited her and whether she was prepared to confront the shadows lurking in her family's past. The estate stood as both a promise of connection and a potential source of pain. Determined to face whatever awaited her, she began mapping out her visit, outlining questions she must ask and details to observe. Yet underneath her palpable resolve lay uncertainty. Was she ready to unearth the realities that had been buried? Tomorrow would be the first step into her family's story, a journey of discovery cloaked in the unknown. Suddenly her phone buzzed again, and her heart dropped. It was her cousin with a follow-up message. "I found something else. You need to see it before the visit. It might change everything." What could possibly await her now, and would it bring the clarity she craved, or fan the flames of confusion even higher? The morning dawned laden with anticipation. Claire awoke before sunrise, her heart racing with a cocktail of excitement and apprehension. The message from her cousin echoed in her mind like a distant drumbeat, a harbinger of revelations that could redefine her family's narrative. She prepared for her visit meticulously, fueled by an urgent need to decipher the links between her past and present, the promise of clarity amid family shadows. Driving toward the estate, the world transformed around her. The trees, once a distant memory in sepia tones, now sprawled out like sentinels guarding secrets. Each mile felt heavy with burdens yet to be unearthed. Claire's fingers gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white against the contrasting softness of her leather gloves. The sun broke through the horizon, streaking the sky in brilliant hues reminiscent of the photograph. Was that a sign? Upon reaching the estate, the imposing structure loomed larger than she envisioned, a cathedral of brick and stone that felt both foreign and inherently known. She paused, inhaling the air thick with history, grounding herself before crossing its threshold. Here lay answers to questions she had yet to formulate, and even potential conflicts she couldn't predict. As she entered, the air shifted. Inside, the rooms appeared frozen in time. Eclectic furniture lined the narrow hallways, and echoes of past conversations seemed trapped within the ornate walls. Her footsteps felt hesitant yet purposeful. Claire's pulse quickened as she surveyed the photographs lining the walls. Faces depicted moments of joy and solemnity, their eyes staring back with an unnerving weight of expectation. She pulled out her phone, intending to review her notes and questions, but the buzz of an incoming message had her heart racing once more. It was her cousin. You need to see the letter attached to the photograph. The urgency pulled her deeper into her thoughts. What letter? What truth had been concealed within that sepia-toned moment? Fumbling with her phone, she finally accessed the attachment. Her eyes followed the looping script as she read. Words filled with familial strife, correspondence from her great-grandfather to estranged family members, blaming them for the downfall of their legacy and dramatically defending their honor. Claire's heart sank. Could this animosity be the reason for her family's fractured ties? Did the estate conceal untold grievances? An overwhelming sense of despair washed over her. The realization struck her. Her pursuit of connection meant confronting the very divisions that had built walls within her lineage. It wasn't simply about regaining a physical space. This journey could force her to become the mediator of a conflict born long before her existence. Could she find the resolve to reclaim not just the estate, but also the fragmented family relationships? The letter became a catalyst. With it, a determination began to stir. She recognized this was not only about healing ancestral wounds, but about understanding her own. The prospect of reconciling histories terrified her, yet it ignited a flicker of hope. The path of reconciliation would demand courage and vulnerability in past conflicts, mirroring her internal struggles. As she wandered deeper into the estate, a voice echoed in her mind. What if she could be the bridge, the force that provides resolution and understanding? What if the letter's accusations weren't an end, but rather a beginning of sorts? Yet beneath that flicker of hope lay fear. What if she unearthed truths that were too painful to bear? The uncertainty loomed, threatening to overwhelm her. Nevertheless, Claire understood she was at a crossroads, each decision leading her further down the path of self-discovery. The air was thick with both potential and dread. As she moved toward the heart of the estate, the echoes of her ancestors whispered louder, urging her toward the truth that waited within these walls. Determined, she whispered to herself, "Today begins the reclaiming of all that was lost." What awaited her at this pivotal moment, and would she have the strength to bring light to the shadows of her family? Claire stood still, enveloped by the weight of the heritage surrounding her. The ornate wallpaper encased echoes of whispered histories, and she felt the silence pressing against her as if the house itself was scrutinizing her every move. Each step taken through the grand hallway felt like a negotiation, a silent agreement she needed to establish not just with the estate, but with herself. With the phone still clutched in her hand, Claire studied the letter again. Her great-grandfather's accusations resonated painfully within her, each word almost a mirror reflecting the fractures she had seen in her family. A sharp sense of indignation rose within her. How could family members let such animosity fester over generations without seeking resolution? But just as quickly, self-doubt gnawed at her resolve. Was she equipped for such a monumental task? The photographs continued to bear down on her, their gazes piercing and accusatory. Forcing herself to breathe, she turned away, her mind racing with possibilities. Confrontation, discussion, understanding. The thought of initiating conversations with estranged relatives filled her with a mix of dread and a newfound determination. Claire understood this wasn't solely about reclaiming the estate. The essence of forgiveness, vulnerability, and ultimately reconciliation lingered closely behind. As she walked deeper into the estate, she began to formulate her plan. She would seek out her cousin for support first. They shared a bloodline, and perhaps together they could confront the remnants of their family's past. Perhaps a united front would shield them from the ghosts that had long haunted their lineage. Yet another layer of complexity unraveled within her consciousness. Claire paused, her fingers running over the intricate carvings of the antique furniture. Could her cousin feel the same determination? Or would the shadows of the past instill fear instead? Would she need to forge ahead alone, grappling with the distress of resurrecting pain? This realization took root, and Claire dared to confront her own internal conflict. Taking a moment to breathe deeply, She envisioned the conversations that awaited her, steps toward brightness piercing through shrouded memories. Staring at her reflection in a mirrored cabinet, she prayed for the strength to become vulnerable. Understanding how to express her feelings, dreams, and fears would be crucial in this endeavor. The call came in suddenly, pulling her from her reverie. Her cousin's voice crackled through the speaker, laced with urgency. "Claire, I found something else. You need to come to the study." Surprise and anticipation collided within her, but she couldn't ignore the underlying tension in her cousin's tone. Had she misjudged this endeavor already? Determination swelled as she made her way through the labyrinth of memories, heavier than she anticipated. The study door loomed ahead, and Claire's heart raced anew, the thrill of discovery tinged with anxiety. What awaited her inside? Was this another piece of the puzzle leading to more questions, or the cornerstone of answers she desperately sought? With her hand resting on the polished handle, a sudden surge of doubt clawed at her. Was she truly ready to unearth further revelations about this fractured legacy? As she turned the knob and pushed the door open, Claire could only wonder if she was prepared for what she might find, or if the shadows would recede or grow more imposing. What had her cousin uncovered that could potentially tip the balance in her journey? The moment hung in the air as she stepped into the study, heart racing with uncertainty and expectation, fueled by the urgent need for clarity. The dim light of the study cast elongated shadows across the room as Claire stepped inside, her heart pounding against her chest. There, amidst the heavy tomes and antique furnishings, her cousin stood with a folder spread open on the desk, the edges curling slightly as if eager to divulge its secrets. Claire concentrated on the fidgeting hands of her cousin, a palpable anxiety radiating from her. "What did you find?" Claire's voice trembled slightly, revealing her own anxious anticipation. She approached the desk, the air thickening with urgency. The folder contained an assortment of documents, old letters, photographs, and what appeared to be legal documents. "I think these could change everything," her cousin replied, her eyes darting from the contents of the folder to Claire. "If what I'm reading is correct, it suggests there's far more to our family's history than we ever realized." Claire's fingers grazed the papers as she lifted a letter, the ink smudged, but the words still legible. It spoke of hidden trusts and unresolved disputes over inheritance. As she scanned the text, fragments of familial discord unfolded before her like a sordid novel. Anger and disbelief surged within her. Her great-grandfather hadn't merely been a vengeful spirit of the past. He had fought for a reason, and an uneasy sense of justice began to form within Claire. "Are we meant to unravel this mess?" her cousin asked, an edge of fear creeping into her voice, shaking Claire from her thoughts. The prospect of diving deeper was daunting, like trying to disentangle a knotted thread while the fabric threatened to unravel completely. Claire inhaled sharply, her determination hardening. "Yes," she replied, her voice steadier than her heart felt. "We have to confront this. Ignoring it won't make it go away." The audacity in her statement marked a turning point. This wasn't simply about revisiting the past. It was an invitation to reshape their futures. As they meticulously examined each document, a startling realization struck Claire. Amidst the chaos of accusations and grievances, there was a family legacy to be salvaged. She felt the weight of responsibility resting heavily on her shoulders. Was it finally her turn to become the catalyst for healing? But what if delving into these histories unearthed unresolved pain? Moments flashed in Claire's mind. Fighting over dinner tables, hushed arguments behind closed doors, relatives smiling through clenched teeth. Memories whispered, warnings of the bitterness that had simmered beneath their surfaces. How do we approach this with our family? Claire's voice wavered, revealing the conflict raging inside her. It was one thing to confront history in private, but another entirely to lay bare the wounds for all to see. Her cousin looked thoughtful. "We could call a family meeting, frame it as a reunion rather than an interrogation. Maybe just starting with the truth will ease some tensions." An idea began to seep through the haze of her uncertainty. Claire was tired of carrying the weight of family secrets upon her back. Discussing these matters openly could shift the trajectory of their family history, turning wounds into dialogues rather than open festering sorrows. The thought ignited a sense of purpose, spurring an inner strength she didn't know existed. But then doubt threatened again. What if their efforts only invited more anger? What if clarity didn't result in unity, but rather chaos? As Claire stared at her cousin, a flicker of resolve ignited within her. We start with the family. It's time to confront our past together. With the new direction in sight, they both knew they were standing at the precipice of something transformative. But could they navigate the minefield of emotions and hidden resentments swirling between their family members? The study had morphed from a mundane space of secrets into a crucible of possibilities. Claire realized that each step taken could either bridge their futures or deepen the chasms between them. What awaited them in the family meeting could either bind them together or tear them apart. With an emboldened determination, Claire thought, the time had come to face the ghosts of their past. The days leading up to the family meeting were a blur of sleepless nights and constant apprehension for Claire. Each morning greeted her with a knot in her stomach that tightened as the date approached. She had always been the caretaker in her family, the one who managed emotional outbursts and silenced arguments with diplomacy. Now, however, she would wrestle with emotional ghosts that could very well erupt into chaos. In the quiet hours before dawn, Claire grappled with her reflections in the mirror. After years of playing the role of the peacemaker, she began to question whether she had ever understood her true self. Was she simply a product of her family dynamics, or did she possess the capacity to carve out a new identity, one that could navigate the treacherous waters of her lineage? The first order of business was to gather her family. With each phone call, she felt herself teetering on the edge of an emotional cliff. The tone of each voice echoed a mixture of surprise and reluctance, often dancing dangerously close to irritation. "A family meeting?" they would ask, an incredulity that weighed down the conversation. Claire would carefully assure them that it was vital and that they would all rally together, though deep down, doubt slithered through her thoughts. As the appointed day arrived, Claire stood in front of her family's old oak dining table, unwittingly embodying the role of a judge entering a courtroom. The room was a historical monument, filled with faded memories that reeked of unresolved tensions. What awaited her behind the closed doors would not merely be a negotiation of disputes, it was potential confrontation with the echoes of their past. Her heart raced as they slowly gathered around the table, each person claiming their seat like a spectator, waiting for the performance of a lifetime. She could feel the resentment simmering in the air, the family's dysfunction poised like a ticking time bomb. The wavering looks from her relatives reminded her of distant judgment, unspoken words dancing on the edges of their lips. It was intimidating, yet it ignited a fire within her. "I want to thank everyone for coming," Claire began, her voice steady but laced with the anxiety of what this could lead to. "We need to talk about our family history. There are long-standing issues that need to be addressed. We can either ignore them and continue living in denial, or we face them and start healing together." The silence that enveloped the room felt heavy, suffocating even. Claire's cousin shifted uncomfortably, and she could see the glimmers of fear and skepticism lingering in the eyes of everyone present. Was she truly prepared for what lay ahead? Suddenly her uncle, typically the loudest voice in the room, slammed his hand on the table, breaking the tension. "What are you even talking about, Claire? Are you trying to start a family feud? It's just easier to forget." In that moment, Claire felt a flood of emotions, rage, betrayal, and an unwavering determination to challenge their family's established norms. She had spent years walking on eggshells, but today would not be another instance of silence. "No, Uncle, that's the problem. Forgetting only continues the cycle of pain. There's truth buried within our past, and I refuse to allow this family to live another generation shackled by fear." These words surged from her like a ritual invocation, rallying a courage she had never fully claimed before. In confronting their past together, Claire finally recognized her own need for healing. She stood firm, her inner voice sharpening, a lifetime of being invisible, beginning to dissolve. Yet, as the wave of exhilaration surged within, her heart thudded with the fear of potential backlash. Had she crossed a line? Would their response confirm or deny her deepest desires for familial salvation? With them watching, Claire summoned her courage. This isn't about blame, it's about understanding. The room vibrated with uncertainty as she sucked in a deep breath, preparing to navigate the choppy waters ahead. But was the foundation strong enough to support the truth she needed to unveil? And as she gazed at the faces staring back at her, anticipation coalesced in her mind. What revelations awaited her as she peeled back the layers of tradition, secrets, and hurt? For the very first time, Claire felt the empowering weight of taking control of her narrative, but the question that hung in the air remained: could she handle whatever came next? As tension crackled in the air like a tightly wound string ready to snap, Claire wrestled with the weight of her own declaration. She could feel the familiar role of caretaker battling against the ferocity of her newfound resolve. The faces around her, once mere reflections of her role in the family, now represented a tapestry of unprocessed emotions that she was determined to unravel. Her uncle's voice still echoed ominously, fueling a whirlwind of thoughts in her mind. How could she convey the necessity of confronting their painful history without setting off a chain reaction of defensiveness? Deep down, Claire sensed a fracture, not only within the family but also within herself. This meeting had become a crucible for her to emerge anew, but at what cost? In overcoming her role as the peacemaker, Claire was learning to reallocate her energy, transforming it not into blame, but into an anticipation of resulting healing. She took a breath, grounding herself in this moment. What happened to me and what I experienced shouldn't have to remain a secret, she stated, her voice steady and assertive. I've spent too long protecting everyone else, and I need to share my truth. The room stood still, a haunting silence enveloping them, as though they were held captive by the gravity of her words. Slowly, she noticed the subtle changes in their expressions. Initially skeptical, her relatives began to exchange glances, their instinctive defenses softening in the wake of her candor. The unspoken truth hung in the air like heavy fog, a reminder of unhealed wounds that could no longer stay buried. Claire took a step closer to the table, her heart pounding as she felt her voice gain momentum. Each one of us carries our own hurt, and pretending it doesn't exist only perpetuates our suffering. Her brother, usually the quietest, finally spoke up. You think you're the only one with problems? We all have been dealing with our own demons in silence. His voice carried an edge, a mix of resentment and vulnerability. Claire could empathize with his struggles. Perhaps they all carried burdens too heavy to share. Yes, we all have pain, Claire replied. And while it's easier to pretend it's not there, confronting it together can lighten our load. We don't have to carry this alone anymore. A flicker of realization crossed her cousin's face, as if something had been awakened inside him. So, how do we start? Claire caught that glimmer of hope in his eyes, stirring something resilient within her. Let's just be honest. Share what we feel, what we've never said. Anger, sadness, confusion, whatever it is, let it out. Let's voice our truths. It can only bring us closer. One after another, her family members went from defensiveness to uncertainty, each taking the plunge into this unknown territory. Claire had opened the door, and the conversations began to cascade around the table. Discussions laced with honesty started to emerge, painful stories leading to shared laughter and unexpected tears. There was much to navigate still, but as they opened up, Claire found herself feeling lighter. Each revelation appeared to dissolve the weight of years spent tiptoeing around anger and resentment. In those moments, she saw not just her family, but a group of individuals, each imperfect, each trying to find their way. As the evening wore on, Claire felt a renewed sense of self. Who would she be if she didn't have to constantly manage the emotional landscape of her family? A thought occurred to her. Perhaps healing could coexist with discovering her true identity. But each knot of understanding also brought another question into relief. How deep did the roots of their issues run? As the conversations unfolded, Claire sensed that even greater truths lay beneath the surface, darker shadows waiting to be revealed, and she could feel an unsettling urgency amid the intimacy of their revelations. She held on to that newfound tenacity, a question lingering at the back of her mind. What if confronting these shadows revealed more than she bargained for? More challenges, deeper pains hidden beneath the surface? Could she steadfastly navigate the revelations to come, or would she find herself unraveling alongside them? The room buzzed with newfound energy, every voice significant. But Claire stood at a precipice, sensing that this was just the beginning of a journey that could lead them all to revelation, or even deeper conflict. Weeks passed since the family meeting, yet the buzz of those critical conversations lingered in Claire's mind like a haunting melody, one that both soothed and unsettled her. The journey of addressing their collective pain had been transformative. With every outing, she felt anchored by a space of shared vulnerability and courage. Faced with one pivotal truth, a reality she had long avoided, Claire recognized her own personal growth. Once hidden behind a mask of caretaking, she was beginning to find her own voice, piecing together a narrative that no longer ran parallel to her family's pain, but stood as a testament to her strength. Her determination materialized into action. Inspired by conversations that had bridged old wounds, Claire decided to organize a family outing at the estate, a stepping stone towards reclaiming it not just as a home, but as a sanctuary for healing and connection. As she planned the day, excitement mixed with trepidation. Would this fortify the breakthroughs they had achieved, or would it fracture them anew? On the day of the gathering, a burst of color greeted her guests, spanning the vibrant hues of warm sunflowers and lush greens. The estate, once a mere shell burdened by history, now represented possibility. As family members arrived, Claire's heart raced. She met their faces with an assuredness that had come from confronting their shared past. As they gathered in the sunlit courtyard, Claire recalled the anxious faces and whispered fears from their first meeting. Today felt different, infused with light, laughter, and an unspoken commitment to support one another. "Thank you all for coming together today," she began, feeling the warmth of their shared space enveloping her. "We have made strides in confronting the past, but today is about creating new memories, centered around this estate, our home." Each shared story from her relatives added texture to the fabric of familial bonds, hurdles becoming stepping stones. Those who had once remained silent began to share anecdotes of summers spent on the estate, highlighting warmth and nostalgia, folding back burdens of hurt while weaving a narrative rich in laughter and remembrance. Yet even in the midst of celebration, the weight of history loomed overhead. After the initial thrill subsided, Claire sensed deeper currents of tension flaring within her uncles and aunts. Someone was bound to broach the uncomfortable truths buried beneath their conversations. Her cousin stood up, taking a deep breath before speaking. "I think we need to address the elephant in the room, the reason for the estrangement within this family." Gasping whispers filled the air as everyone turned to Claire in an unspoken demand for her guidance. The truth begins here, Claire thought. Creating a space for dialogue is crucial. With newfound resolve, she nodded and said, "It's essential to remember we're doing this together, moving toward reconciliation rather than conflict." The ensuing conversations, filled with raw candor and emotional honesty, helped peel back the layers further. Tensions that had simmered for decades surfaced in muted tones, but within each invective lay an opportunity for healing. Friends became allies, sharing their experiences with tumultuous family dynamics and unearthing shared experiences that tied them more tightly than they realized. As the sun began to set, a warm golden glow illuminated the estate. They headed inside for the final leg of their gathering, a family dinner. Each dish was filled with curiosity, nostalgia, and care, a feast symbolizing their commitment to nourishing one another through both hardship and shared joy. Claire felt a buoyancy in her heart, one she hadn't felt before. The suppressed conflicts that had needed confronting now surfaced with a softening tenderness, linking her family members through shared understanding rather than division. She smiled, feeling a satisfaction swell within her. The climax of the evening came when Claire proposed a toast. To our past, which has shaped us, our presents uniting us, and our futures that lie ahead, may we work together to redefine our legacy from resentment to love. As muffled cheers surrounded her, Claire locked eyes with her cousin. There it was, an acknowledgement of the metamorphosis that had encompassed them all. Together, they would undoubtedly navigate the uncharted waters of their heritage, but now they did so, not only as individuals, but as a cohesive family, committed to fostering connection rooted in compassion. They had ventured through the haze of familial tension to uncover resilient truths and rekindle their lineage, transforming the estate into not merely a place, but a stronghold for hope and healing. With unwavering determination, Claire recognized the profound significance of collective courage, transforming the past into a shared strength that promised a bright horizon. Finally, Claire stepped outside to glance at the estate under the starlit sky. The journey had demanded every ounce of her effort and energy, demanding confrontation and vulnerability, but she had emerged transformed. In reclaiming her family's estate, she had also reclaimed her identity, not just as a caretaker, but as a resilient woman committed to growth and change. It had been chaotic, messy, and fraught with emotion, all part of the authentic journey toward her truth. Claire reflected on how she had matured, no longer escaping discomfort, but embracing it, knowing it was pivotal in forging new beginnings. In this newfound clarity, Claire understood her role, a bridge for connection, a beacon of resilience, and an architect of hope. Ultimately, she had not only fought for her family's legacy, but garnered respect for her own, a beautiful testament to individual growth. As a soft smile adorned her face, Claire turned to discover the brilliance of the future that awaited her, and she couldn't help but feel profound gratitude for the road that had led her to this moment. This is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us reach more hearts. Comment your reactions and theories about this conclusion. Your voice matters. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformative journey. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.